If the solution that you're creating is perfectly ready before you go to market, you've gone to market too late. You need to just get a minimally viable product or service ready and go to market. You will get feedback from the customer. You are going to have backlash. You are going to have problems with fulfillment and operations, but you're going to need to tweak those anyway. Whatever you think is perfect when you go to market isn't perfect anyway. So stop f***ing around. Just get everything together, go to market, and deal with whatever headaches come later.
All right, guys, welcome back to the podcast. And in this episode, we have a special entrepreneur who has had an amazing journey. And it didn't start out as being an entrepreneur, going through courses, etc., but was actually an entrepreneur that lived and changed because of the experiences that he had in a prior way of living, and has transformed and has built multiple 7-figure and even 8-figure businesses from having his own inner alchemy from his past self to his present self. And he's an amazing entrepreneur. And so with that said, Wade, thank you for coming on, man. It's great to have you. I appreciate you coming in. Of course, man. Of course. You know, we had my buddy Colin on, and I was like, dude, I want another high-level entrepreneur. Who do you want on? And or I'd asked him who I want on. He's like, you got to get Wade. His story is insane. And just from hearing a little bit what we were talking about prior, man, super inspirational. And I think there's a lot of nuggets that the audience is going to get from that. So I definitely want to dive in. So to paint the picture a little bit, I know you're a multiple, 7-figure or 8-figure entrepreneur now, but let's bring it back to kind of the journey that you had prior, because I think the setting is so important for what you're doing and helping people do now, that it gives people no excuses really to not change and not become, the successful person that they want to be. So let's bring it back to, how did Wade grow up and how did he get inside of a situation that required change in order to achieve success?
For sure. Thanks. And thanks for the intro. Well said, for sure.
Absolutely.
Look, it started off, I was just, as I was saying to you earlier, I was obsessed with sports. Sports were my whole life. I also played quarterback growing up as well as hockey. And I think quarterback really was one of the early foundations to be able to help me manage other people. And I loved that skill set. I loved knowing what everyone on the field needed to do. I loved being the guy that everyone came to. I loved being the leader. It was just sort of a natural thing to me. At around 13 years old, I found drugs and alcohol, and that started to really take a hold of my life. And so despite getting drafted to play hockey and despite, having scholarships to go play hockey, drugs really started to take a hold of me, and getting DUIs and getting assault charges and starting to get addicted to certain drugs really sort of took my path in the wrong direction, for sure. And it actually put me in a position where I decided, hey, I'm just going to start hustling drugs. And that was my first real, I started working in restaurants and I had some other sales jobs, but selling drugs is where I really started to understand the psychology of people, how to market myself, how to pay attention to the market. And that was like my, the real hustle, I think, that sort of bloomed, my entrepreneurial journey, if I'm looking back.
Yeah. So you got started hustling drugs, you got into sports, and that was really the way to not only have built charisma, but also to figure out inner dynamics with people. And so going down that path, I think a lot of athletes and stuff, they get tempted with that stuff. They get tempted with the drugs because it's typically there, right? Especially if you're really good at football. I mean, you're a quarterback, right? So maybe you're the high school quarterback that was obviously good looking, was able to go to the parties and all that kind of stuff. It's in the environment. And so how did you, where did that take you? Let's kind of go a little bit deeper as to, that environment, that type of situation, bringing you deeper into drugs and all that kind of stuff. Where did you end up by doing that?
Well, it was just readily available, and then and going to prep school, it became very obvious that, Adderall and Ritalin and Coke were really, really prevalent for performance. And so the way that I started to look at drugs and alcohol was, for me, it was a performance enhancer. And then smoking weed and Xanax was something that was able to quiet my brain and sort of allow me to have some peace. What this also did was, for my entire life, this limited me working on myself. I was very, very immature my whole life because I had never dealt with my emotions. I was basically numb my entire life. From the age of 13 to 31, there's very few days that I missed smoking weed and eating Xanax. Right? There's a lot of time in my life that I completely forget because Xanax will just blank it out for you. And so I had a very rough journey, having these 3 DUIs and losing my license, and I got multiple assault charges, and from where I was like, wow, I'm just constantly in trouble. I've been kicked out of prep school. I've been kicked out of college. My family's ready to give up on me. They kicked me out of the house. They found out that I was selling drugs. I had a lawyer on retainer by the age of 19 years old. By the age of 23, I had spent over $100,000 on a lawyer. Who basically became like my best friend. I was spending all my time with this guy. It was unbelievable. And he always, both. I had, this guy, Paul and Brooks, and God bless them. Every time I would sit with them, they would be like, dude, you have a promising future. You just got to get this shit together. Unlike anyone else we know, you just got to get it together. And on the third DUI and on the third assault charge, they just said, Wade, we can't support you anymore. We can't keep defending you, and what kind of a lawyer is going to say that, right? Obviously, they usually just want money, but they were just like, dude, something has to change. But then I got back into college and things started going well in school. And mind you, I think most of my issue is that I could smoke weed, do Xanax, do Oxycontin, and maybe blow some coke and operate at a very high level. Like I had 4.0s all the way through college. I always did amazing at my jobs. I got licenses for health insurance and for selling certain things. I was approached on becoming an accountant, and I could pass everything with flying colors on lots of drugs. Wow. So I was convinced that I could just live life on drugs and still succeed. And then that movie Limitless came out, and I start to be convinced that like I can live a life of drugs and actually succeed. Well, then I get addicted to Oxycontin. And this was crazy because we used to play a poker game, and it was a joke poker game. It was $10 buy-in. We were broke college kids at the time, right? It was a $10 buy-in. Everyone puts $10 in the middle, and one kid who's an Oxycontin dealer says, I don't have $10, but I have this Oxycontin 80. So he takes the $70 out of the middle and puts the 80 in the middle. And I'm like, what is this? And it's like, it's like a Percocet or, a Vicodin. And I was like, all right, fine, we'll all play for it. And so I win that poker game and I take it, and they're like, all right, now you got to be careful. Like you can only take a little bit of this thing. It's a little more powerful than we let on. So I do a little bit. I love it immediately. I get addicted. It's the most addictive substance of all time. It's synthetic heroin. It's, unbelievable. I'd never experienced anything like it. Crazy. So I was able to function at a very high level on this, right? I was an accountant at the time. I had a job I was bartending. I was actually managing other drug dealers. We had these apartments that we were managing. We rented them out to drug dealers on Oxycontin. The problem was once you don't have it, it's literally just like NZT and what you see in Limitless. Like you fall apart. Your whole body starts to deteriorate. Your bones feel like they're breaking. You feel like you're going to throw up. You can't keep any food down. It's a horrible place to be. And so my progression was, we used to con this girl into Texas, from Texas, to send 500 Oxycontin 80s every week in a Skittles bag. This is a lot of drugs. This is like $40,000 of drugs every week in a Skittles bag. Right? And so we would get them, we would do them, and eventually that plug ran dry. We couldn't get her to do it anymore. And so we find ourselves in a position where I'm doing 5 Oxycontin 80s a day. This is like $400 of Oxycontin 80. This is way more than anybody should ever do, right? And I find myself in this position where I can't function without it. And so now I'm robbing kids at gunpoint, right? So I'm just consistently jacking fools and getting Oxycontin, and I'm in a really bad place. Like this was the darkest time of my life because I was down to my last $800, and I'm sitting in a car going to get, Oxycontin, I'm going to get a 10-pack. And my gun slips out. The kid takes my gun, puts it here and says, give me your money. And now I have no gun, no Oxycontin, no money. And I just remember I went to bed and I woke up that next day and I felt like all my bones were breaking. I was just throwing up. I was sweating. It was the worst feeling ever. And so I told my parents, I called them. I was 24 at the time. I called them and said, hey, I'm super addicted to Oxycontin. I need help. At the time, we were being followed by the feds, and I had already known it. They had, brought us in and tried to get us to wear wires and do all this bullshit. And I just remember, fuck you. Like, it's never going to happen. I also thought I was invincible. I had a lawyer that got me off of everything. All these charges, all the DUIs, all the assault charges, everything that I've gotten, I have 0 on my record. I have a squeaky clean record. It looks like I'm a prince. Wow. And so I was like, I don't care what you guys say or what you want me to do. I'm going to get out of all this. Wow. So that was a substantial bottom in my life. I just remember saying, like, hey, I'm never going to do painkillers again. And I went to rehab, and fortunate enough, I never did Oxycontin again after that.
Wow, that's awesome, man. I mean, crazy story, insane story. And, I don't know necessarily how common it is for people once they go down that route to escape that route. So it's attested to that feeling of just needing to change. And everyone has it, especially that is successful. There's some sort of catalyst, and it could be different extremes, could be a death in the family. It could be some personal stuff like you were talking about going on, or it could just be environmental. Like you're just tired of the environment. At least that's what it was for me, to then spark that catalyst and the change and taking that next step. But you said something really important, which was asking for help. And, in entrepreneurship, you need coaches, you need mentors, you need that stuff as well. In personal life, you need that stuff as well. And then friends and family to count on. And so that takes a lot of courage, but that's the first step. And so taking that first step is really, really, what holds a lot of people back, is having that ego come down and just being naked and really being honest with yourself.
Dude, that's literally what holds everyone back. And I say this all the time. I wish more people hit rock bottom quicker, because other people that don't hit rock bottom and aren't able to say, wow, I'm powerless, or I need to surrender, or I need to accept help, they go on just blotting this miserable existence for the rest of their life, sort of in the middle, living this shit life, never accepting help, never suppressing their ego, but never actually making it to the next level. It's unbelievable how often I see this.
Yeah, it's insane, man. I remember, especially in my hometown, all the people, it was mostly like a nurse, cop, kind of construction town. And there was no one really that wanted change there. It was like, hey, just stay in this status quo, stay in this bubble. And I was like, no, we want more. We want the better lifestyle. We want, the cars or whatever it is, the money, the freedom to go do whatever we want to do. And it takes a lot of force to get out of that bubble, or to get out of that, because it's just reinforced by your environment. And so I'm a big believer of getting out of that hometown, getting away from those relationships. I mean, some of the extremities of the relationships that you had, I couldn't imagine having that on your back all the time, having to look over your shoulder for every little move that you did. But
dude, I had to move. One summer I had to go and live with my uncle in New York for the entire summer because I had a hit on my life.
Wow, man, that's insane. So literally 50% of the group is gone.
Yeah,
man, what a crazy story there. So you go then into rehab, you get out, you said, hey, I need to make this change. From there, what were some of the things that you did and attempted in entrepreneurship? Because it's never just straight up from one, business to the next, or for the first business, I should say, once you start business. So what kind of happened after that? And then you started getting into other businesses. What was the progression journey like there?
Yeah. So at that time I was 24.
Okay.
And I was working at an accounting firm. I went to a bank and I became a commercial loan officer. Then I became a commercial loan manager. And so I was still working corporate jobs at that time.
Okay.
And I was still finishing school as well, because I had all these medical leaves, and it ended up taking me 8 years to graduate. So for the next 3 years, I went to school, finished school, and worked full time in an accounting firm and a bank. And then my last year, I got into car sales. One of my buddies was a manager and owner at a car dealership. Mm-hmm. And he was like, dude, how much you making? I'm like, 80K in there. That's like the most I can make right now. And he's like, you can make 150 selling cars for me. And he's like, by the way, it's a fun job. You'll like it. And so I was like, okay, fine. Well, let's give it a whirl.
Yeah. So
immediately I just, was very successful selling cars. Exactly like you said, I made 150, and I was still like kind of finishing out school. So for me, I was like, this is great. Vermont, everything was low expense, and that was a decent wage at that time.
Yeah.
So I did that for a couple of years, and I was like, look, I know that my ceiling here is 200. Like it's not, there's no one here making more than 200, and it was going to be hard for me to do that. Mm-hmm. So someone pitched me on doing financial advising and life insurance. And I was like, okay, well, how much can I make here? And they said 500, and I said, okay, let's do it. Let's roll. So I do this. So I join, and very quickly I start doing really well. I get my first check for 200K after like 2 months of working there.
Oh, wow.
Just immediately, because my network was big, and I had a lot of people that, could utilize what I was doing.
Yeah.
I get that check. I come to Miami. I'll blow 100K in.
Dude, literally playing real life GTA, huh? Just buying everything.
Bro, my life is actually like, my friends always say like Wheezy TV, mm-hmm. But dude, I just used to do the craziest thing. Like I was telling you earlier, I had a chemist that would make us Molly. I had a veterinary office in Peru that would send us liquid ketamine. So then I brought apart the GNC tablets. I'd put ketamine in it, Molly, Coke. I'd crush up Xanax. And then I would take out all 20 Marlboro cigarettes. I would roll joints and the exact size and specification of the cigarette, and I'd put it back in the Marlboro case, and then I'd vacuum seal it and put it in my luggage. And I would travel with like $10,000 worth of drugs, and it never even fazed me. I never even thought, wow. And dude, I was so cocky that I would leave the 4.2 ounce cologne bottle in my shit, knowing that it's 0.2 ounces over, that they were probably going to search my toiletries, which had all that shit in them. I didn't give a fuck.
Wow.
Insane, dude, because I just had this complex that like nobody could touch me. I literally believed that I was untouchable because of how much I had gotten through. By the way, I flipped 2 cars with no seatbelt on the highway at 80 miles an hour, end over end. One of them, the jaws out of life, had to pick me out of the car. And dude, I'm sitting there crunched up like this, and they're like, have you sustained any injuries? Have you anything? And I remember looking at him and I said, you're going to cut my pinky.
Got a paper cut.
Yeah. and I thought I was invincible, right? And yeah, how did you survive this? And I was like, I put my arm on the ceiling, like it wasn't that hard. And they were just like, you are just an insane kid.
Yeah.
You know, so wow. I thought I was invincible. You know, I get into financial advising, I'm making the money, I'm down here in Miami just spending money like crazy. I would work hard doing financial advising, I'd make a bunch of money, and I would come down to Miami. I would come down here and I was networking with people, and I had a bunch of friends that grew up down here. So I had a nice little network down here where I was very, very insulated. And I was living the, you know, unbelievable life of like staying at the one in the Satai, and then my buddy's parents lived in Sunset Islands, you know, and so so it was just a free for all the time.
Wow.
So I did that for a number of years. I had also a group of friends in Vermont that introduced me to Alcoholics Anonymous. So I was court mandated and I had to start going, and that's how I stopped drinking. Was, you know, I started utilizing AA, but I never stopped smoking weed. I never stopped doing Xanax, and I never stopped doing the party drugs for any period of time. I just thought, if I'm not drinking, at least I'm not getting DUIs and almost killing myself.
Mm-hmm. Kind of keeping it in the closet,
exactly,
addressing it because the show is.
I was hiding a lot of it. You know, I was really, really hiding it, and so you know, I progressed there. You know, continue being a financial advisor, and which, you know, people kind of leave you alone and let you run your own business. You know, no one was really telling me what to do. Mm-hmm. I got sick of it, and on the side, I started a wholesale laptop company, and this was my first. Well, I had a clothing company when I was younger, you know, like a fun little project.
Yeah.
So I started a wholesale laptop company, and we started buying 1,000 laptops at a time, and then flipping them to, at the time it was Newegg and BH Photo. And this was like right before Amazon was, you know, really, really prevalent. Yeah. So we could flip large quantities. Okay. We never had to touch anything. We just brokered everything, and it was great. And I was just getting, you know, again, same thing. We were getting like 100K checks off these flips, and me and my partner would split it. I would get 50K. And I was always living in like big check mentality. I was always whale hunting. I was never thinking about like small in any business. I just wanted big checks, and that's all I was going after because it was more exciting. Mm-hmm. It's fun. You know, you get a 200K check at, you know, 25, 26, like it was enjoyable. Sure. So that's really what I did. And then I decided to move to Miami.
Wow.
This is when, so I moved down to Miami with no real plan. Mm-hmm. You know, I'm just like, okay, I'm going to go down to Miami, back into a car dealership and selling Land Rovers. I'm down here in Miami Gardens at the Land Rover dealership, the shittiest place in the world. This is before they had their new dealership. The lot was a dirt lot. It was the most pathetic, disorganized place ever. I was miserable. Like going from Vermont to Miami is the biggest culture shock of all time. Right. And then people buying like, you know, luxury style cars, they just pissed on me. I was a pissant. Somebody that rich people knew and trusted and liked, to literally someone that hit rock bottom from drugs and alcohol 3 months into living in Miami and was literally just getting pissed on by all these rich people. Consistently like, you are a nothing to us, you know, and it was the most humbling experience ever.
Wow.
You know?
Wow. Being chewed up and spit back out. And that was done by self. That was done from drugs and alcohol. I'm sure there were some other things that were done in the journey, but self-imposed, if you will.
Totally.
Wow.
Yeah. Just making really bad decisions, not really aware of what I should be doing. And you know, I hit rock bottom. I end up getting drugged. I end up getting robbed for everything, you know, within 3 months of living here. And I wake up and I'm like, oh my God, this is, you know, despite having all these judicial consequences before, right? So someone might think, wow, you've had so many consequences that at some point you should have woke up from the judicial consequences. Sure. And I wake up and I just had this unbelievable feeling of despair, the loneliest, worst feeling I've ever had in my whole life. And I called somebody very close to me, you know, and I said, hey man, I just got robbed of my jewelry and my watch. And he said, look, I think you got two choices. I think you can bounce in and out of AA for the rest of your life and continue to be a fucking loser, or you can go to AA and do the 12 steps and you might actually have a chance at living a real fulfilled life. And it just clicked. And for the first time, I was like, wow. Yeah, I had gone to AA meetings, but I had never worked a 12-step program, which what it entails is removing all of the character defects that are suppressing one's ability to live without drugs. And I didn't have that ability. You know, my mind was fucking twisted, and like I relied on drugs and alcohol my whole life. And so by actually walking into AA and saying, I surrender, I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing. I don't know how to live life. I'm unmanageable. Somebody help me, and getting a sponsor and just doing everything he said.
Wow. That's the true epitome of just having a real friend to call you out on your bullshit.
Totally.
And I think a lot of entrepreneurs, they have to have that type, group in that circle to be able to say, hey, dude, what the fuck's going on? And that's awesome that you had that. I'm not sure if it was a friend or an entrepreneur, a buddy of yours or whatever, but that is so key, giving you those two options, because it makes it so clear. Like, either stay how you are or fucking make a change. That way you can go experience life completely differently. And did you think that, at that stage, did you think that you'd be where you are here today, the way that you are here today?
So, this journey's been nothing short of ridiculous for me.
Yeah, absolutely.
At the time, I was doing so much ketamine that my brain was weak. I was having a difficult time even putting thoughts together early on in sobriety. I was concerned that maybe I wasn't going to be able to speak at the level that I'm able to today or prior, because I had burned a hole in my brain. And I'd seen people have some serious effects. I saw a kid spill a bottle of acid on his hand once and then just be a lobotomy the rest of his life. And so I was really concerned, like, oh no, maybe I hit that tipping point of like too many drugs and I'm fucked for life. And I got really, really blessed that I met this kid who was a little bit older than me, and he pulls me aside and he says, what's up? What's your story? And at the time I was a little bit closed minded. I didn't want to tell someone else my story. I didn't want to, tell someone else what I had been through.
Right.
And he said, let's go to this coffee shop and tell me what's up. And so for the first time, I just spilled everything to him. I told him my entire life, everything I was ashamed of, everything I had been through, what just happened. I just met this guy, And he says, holy shit, man, like you and I are so similar. And he tells me his story, and it's like identical, basically identical.
Wow.
Some of his shit's even crazier.
Really?
Just like, a commercial real estate agent driving around for 15 years, millions of dollars, starting at age 22, and like also always on Xanax. It's high and just like crazy shit. We're cut from the same cloth,
Wow.
Well, I didn't see that many other people in AA that had what I wanted. When I say had what I wanted, like they weren't super successful, in business or entrepreneurship. They didn't have the money, the family, the equanimity. They didn't understand like everything as a whole package the way that he did. And I was like, I'm just going to learn that job to this guy. And he told me to call him every single day. And to this day is, one of my best friends. He's really, really helped me in the journey in sobriety.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome. So doing a couple of those different businesses, flipping big wholesale packages, chasing big checks, getting the support system that you need in order to actually handle some of the personal stuff and the other challenges that you had. What was it like from there on? Because you did some pretty big stuff in the medical space, coincidentally, on the other side of health. So walk us through that. How did you go from, those two things to then jumping into, that side of the businesses?
Yeah. So 3 weeks later, I got introduced to my mentor, a guy who was in healthcare technologies, who has one of the most incredibly diverse backgrounds I've ever seen. Lost his parents when he was young, grew up in the hood in New York City. He's on the board of many Fortune 500 companies. He was a M&A lawyer for some massive companies and practices. He ran investment banks. He's been in private equity, venture. Wow. Started multiple healthcare technologies companies. Like he's a super thug. Like the most, he's not in zero social media whatsoever, but he's the fucking biggest G I've ever met in my whole life.
So how did you meet him then?
I met him in Sunset Harbor through other connections, just in that area. I got really, really lucky that I was going to AA meetings in that area and seeing and meeting people. So I meet him, and at the time I'm selling cars, and he sees some promise in me. He's like, hey, you got your head on your shoulders and you're working hard. Like, I'll meet with you, but it's going to be every Saturday morning at 7 a.m. And I said, okay, I'll do anything, And so I started going to bed early on Friday nights. I started meeting with him every Saturday morning. And he brought me through these exercises. And this is the reason that I'm so passionate about coaching today, because this guy helped me go from a car salesman to the president of 10X Health to having a healthcare consultancy. This whole path he took me through. And the first thing he did with me was help me understand who I am. And I didn't even understand who I was. I didn't know what my skills, my experience, my interest, and my purpose was. And he brought me through this exercise. And then he started helping me define my 1, 3, and 5 year goals despite being blurry. And then he showed me how to create an action plan. And he gave me real dynamic feedback and insight all along the way, wherever I was. How to connect with people, how to utilize LinkedIn, how to use other social channels, what books and podcasts to read based on where I was at specifically. The actual knowledge, skill sets I needed to immediately implement to be able to accelerate very, very quickly. And without having a mentor, it's nearly impossible to be able to accelerate as quickly as I did. Because I went from there to meeting a woman who owned a financial technologies company. I partnered with her. I had not at that time partnered in any regulated industry. She helped me with that whole thing.
Oh, wow.
We start working together. We create this app. That starts going well. And like I was telling you before, it sunsets because of COVID, because of some of the regulations from the government at COVID, the business falls apart. Now here I am, the beginning of COVID. I'm skiing in Vail and I get a call and they say, we're shutting down the mountains, the Chinese flu. I said, what a fucking joke. Like, this is unbelievable. Like, I'm not going home, Like, I'm going back to LA. Let's go back to LA. So
yeah, COVID was on that mountaintop.
Yeah.
I didn't know.
Yeah. I was like, dude, get the fuck out of here, So we go back to LA and like everyone's calling me, like, go back home. So I go back to Miami. Government extends forbearance 3 weeks later. Everything falls apart. And here I am at the beginning of COVID. Like, who's going to hire me? What am I going to do? How am I going to start a business now? And another case of somebody giving me tough love. And for anybody watching, tough love when somebody needs it is one of the most imperative things you can do. Pardoning somebody, babying people is the worst thing you can do. People need a real fucking kick in the ass. This world is just way too soft. And so I call my buddy and I say, hey man, I'm going to go back to doing financial advising. Let me come work at Fisher with you. And he goes, you fucking hated me. I put you on an island. You hated your life and you did it. This is not the job for you. Why don't you go work on yourself? Click. And he hung up. And I was like, damn.
I just got goosebumps from that.
Fuck.
Wow.
Like it still makes me emotional. I was like,
yeah.
Oh. And dude, this was the biggest turning point in my life. This was, April 2020, right? Because March 2020 was April 2020. So I'm sitting there and I'm working really diligently with my mentor on what's next. What am I going to do? And we go through this process and I said, look, I want to be in healthcare, but I want to be in some sort of functional medicine, not traditional medicine. My sister is she works at an orthopedic company. And so I knew a little bit about healthcare. I had an autoimmune disorder that I beat on my own accord through changing my diet, changing some of my lifestyle habits, through exercise, doing some glutathione injections. And so I knew a little bit, just little bit about functional medicine. But I get a random opportunity after an exorbitant amount of prayer, meditation, reflection, and identifying what I wanted to do, working with my mentor. And he says, look, here's where we're at. Nobody's walking the door. Business is down a little bit, but I need someone to run sales and marketing. And I said, well, business is down, but I just read an article on the Wall Street Journal this morning that said they relaxed telemedicine laws nationwide, meaning you can prescribe from Florida to any state. And aren't you doing hormones? He says, yeah. I said, okay, how much of your business is telemedicine? Isn't this the perfect time to expand? Like, isn't this a blessing?
Yeah.
And he says, yeah, but I don't really know how to scale this thing from a sales and marketing perspective. Like, I have a sales team, but I'm like, okay, look, let's run this. And he's like, well, have you managed a sales team before? At the time, I really hadn't. Like, yeah, I had managed a lot of people and I had a lot of experience doing that, but it wasn't on my resume that I had been a sales manager. And so he's like, oh, why don't you be a sales guy here? So he says, look, for 3 months, be a sales guy, learn the product, understand this, and we'll kind of move you up. So I start there and I quickly run circles around everybody. And in 3 months, I'm outselling everyone. And I say, look, you're already giving me managerial responsibilities. I'm not being a manager and sacrificing my ability to make commission. Put me up as sales manager. So he puts me up to sales manager. And I walk in the door. I remember the first morning meeting. He says, I'm going to guide the morning meeting and I'll let you watch. And I said, why don't we just flip that around? Why don't you just give me the opportunity to see what I can do with these guys? So I did. And instead of preaching at them, I started to understand each of them, their life, what motivated them, the psychology of behind them, what their family life was like. And I spent the next few weeks understanding my entire sales team. And then from there, I put a plan together and I started teaching them meditation every single morning. And when I walked in, they were like, these are fixed mindset cowboys, old school gunslinger salespeople. And now we got to meditate. What is this? Like, are you Mr. Cheezel from Grandma's Boy? Like, dude, this is unbelievable. The hesitation that I got from these guys was ridiculous. Yeah. I handed them all the book Growth Mindset by Carol Dweck. I started teaching them all to meditate. And after 2 weeks, they're addicted to meditation, telling me that it's helping them close more deals. And so I do this and I change the entire sales process. The script, I go from a bullshit script to a question-based framework to really consultative. I change their incentive structure. We start to create a fun environment. I say, untuck all your shirts and let's play fun music and stop being so stiff. And I start to get this real buy-in and we start crushing. I mean, dude, from like a couple $100K a month to $1 million a month in the year and a half that I was there.
Wow.
And so the owner started to leave me alone. And he was like, okay, well, the sales guys are not closing leads at a high enough pace. I said, look, no one's pushing anything down the funnel. Your marketing department is non-existent. Like, I'll take over. So I'll give me the director of growth title. I said, okay, great. Every single weekend and most days I was working with my mentor and other people in marketing and other channels. And I was just an absolute sponge. In this time, I taught myself medicine. So I would go and in order to learn the business, I would get podcasts and then I would get audiobooks. I would listen to the audiobook and every time I heard something I liked, I would buy that book, hard copy, and take that information and I would highlight it and I would start to repurpose the information and then I would write it on a whiteboard and say it out loud, pretending like I'm teaching people. So now I can know anything, any topic in a matter of 1 day and reiterate it to other people in my own framework at a very simple level. So I was able to teach them stem cells. These guys know a ton about medicine, but now I'm able to teach them how to pitch exosomes, a form of cellular medicine, in a way that they had never done before after 3 days of learning this. And they were all like, oh my God. I was obsessed with creating this learning process. So I do this, we start scaling the company, everything goes amazing. We're lacking in the financial department. We don't have financial statements are not where they need to be. We're not projecting revenue. Cash flow is fucking all over the place. This kid walks in and I was like, wow, this is a godsend. He's here to do NADs. He's, an IV to help with, neuro enhancement and memory retention and cognition. We convince him, the owner and myself convince him to actually start spending more of his time. Instead of just being a fractional CFO, we say, hey, we want you, instead of running your business, we want you to be a part of this company and here's the growth trajectory. And he loved it because he was doing healthcare before. He had grown modern medicine before this company, Modern Med. We create, all the KPIs and metrics and executive communication. We structure the business through like the EOS system. We structure everything about the business. Their financial statements were so sloppy before this, they couldn't even tell you any of the metrics that were needed.
Wow. That's how most small businesses are too. So Poise is a really good opportunity for someone like yourself or any entrepreneur that's really listening to tap into it and the existing infrastructure and grow it and add to it. Because a lot of the legacy companies, a lot of the legacy people that are in, whether it's medical or, even the small or the SMBs that I've worked with in the past, they need that help and they need an infrastructure. So that's really cool. You guys latched on. So continue.
You couldn't be any more correct with that. Most small businesses lack structure, technology, and marketing. And you could really easily go into a business and say, hey, this business is doing okay and they're in a growing market and they have a good growth trajectory. But if they don't have a good presence online, their website's not up to snuff, they don't have good marketing funnels, their technology is not perfect and the structure is not great, what an easy opportunity. Literally, I can go into any business right now and restructure that business in a few days. ChatGPT has allowed us to literally write all operating agreements, all legal agreements, all roles and responsibility, job descriptions, all incentive metrics. I can literally restructure a business in days. And the company gets to a point where it's like, we're just shattering all records, everyone's having fun, everyone's loving life.
Yeah.
And I like I said, I personally developed all the employees. That was my whole strategy, was I was going to take each employee and show them how to personally develop a path where they could make more money. Right? I taught the operations manager the importance of sales and how she could change her incentive structure if she started focusing on revenue to be able to earn more money. And then we changed her comp. And so we got everybody on the same page doing this. I had this one kid I personally developed. I brought him from an RN, from a nurse, making $80,000 a year into sales. And he started making $240K in 1 year. Became my top sales guy. And it was a lot of work. The kid was very disorganized. He had a lot of fear. He had never done sales. He was a nurturing nurse kind of guy. He wasn't a sales guy. He wasn't a shark. So I teach him. He starts doing incredibly well, and he gets a call from his dream job that he applied for 2 years ago as a firefighter. He's like, wait, I'm so sorry. I got to leave. I got to go be a firefighter. I said, look, man, all love. No problem. I totally get it. And he goes, but this isn't the end. So I said, oh, okay. Yeah, we'll see. Yeah.
Sure.
So I continue to run the company. We obviously fill his spot and everything's going great. We're just continuing to crush. And about a month and a half later, he calls me and he says, hey, wait, I just did an IV on two of the most famous people in the world. Like 300 million on Instagram famous, you know, like crazy. And then he tells me another person and another person and another person. And these are literally the tip of the top celebrities. And I'm like, bro, who are you working for?
Are all those houses burning down or something?
Dude, I'm like,
firefighter?
Sorry. I missed that. He started doing IVs on the side for Gary Brecka at Streamline Medical.
Oh, okay.
So firefighters have this, because they oftentimes have to do IV, they'll still do like a little side gig of hustling vitamin IVs.
Okay.
So he's doing the side gig. And I'm like, geez, bro, this is crazy. Like, who are you working for? And he says, I'm working with Gary Brecka, and he just got acquired by Grant Cardone, and now they formed 10X Health. And I was like, yeah, I saw this. I've been following the news. I've been watching this.
Yeah.
I've actually been paying really close attention. I've been following Gary now since the moment I got into the industry, because I was psychotic about my competitive analysis, and Gary was just a don. I was like, this guy's
he's awesome.
So I say, okay, Jay, why don't you let them know that you know the most uniquely qualified person in the country that has an ability and recent experience to integrate functional medicine with business in a way that it's scalable, create a sales team, a marketing agency, and a technology platform that would be useful for them. And then I would make him repeat it and rehearse it and repeat it.
Mm-hmm.
Go tell. So he ends up talking to Brandon Dawson, who is Grant's partner, and I get a call from them, a couple hours later. And they're like, hey, we need to meet you. So I go, okay, perfect. When? And they say, well, we're traveling, so in 2 weeks, come and meet us. In that 2 weeks, I submit multiple leads to the 10X Health. I take the whole sales journey, as a fake lead. I understand their entire sales process. I take one of my employees at Health Gains, this company I was working for, and I say, go apply as a salesperson at 10X Health. And these are the questions I want you to ask, and I want you to go through the process. She does that. She meets with the manager. She gets everything asked, gather all the information. Now I walk into this interview. I've already put a prospective employee through their sales hiring process. I know everything about their management, the questions they ask, where maybe they have some holes. And I already know the sales process from a perspective, from a customer.
Yeah.
So I go into this thing so incredibly prepared. I've researched every single person in the room that I walk into. I know where they went to middle school. I walk through this. And they're like, wow, we need you, what position do you want? What do you want your comp to be? What do you want equity to be? And so I say, look, I think I'm poised to be president. They said, great, hop on, let's go. But just so you know, this is a 24/7 job. Like this is not a 9 to 5 anymore. Like we're growing $1 billion company here. So, okay, great. I had opportunity to work with Brandon Dawson. I was very, very excited.
Yeah, he's one of my favorite mentors. I've learned so much from him. I've attended his events, read his books. I mean, he's one of the great mentors that I've been able to have, not only through all the programs and stuff, but even his content on is awesome. So
hell yeah. So I joined 10X Health as president, and within 3 days of joining 10X Health, Brandon and I go back and have a conversation with Mark, the old owner of the business I had just built. And Brandon says, hey, look, I'm interested in purchasing this business. And within 3 weeks, we had sent them a letter of intent, an LOI, and within 3 months, we closed on that. And for me, that was one of the most surreal days of my life. And by the way, in my first 3 months, Brandon just said, let's go. And I'm working with my mentor, and he's like, dude, take the 90-day audit, understand the company, don't be that hotshot dickhead that comes into this company and starts making suggestions. But yet Brandon's like, dude, take a week or two, and we need you.
And let's roll.
Time to roll. Like, let's get to work.
Yeah, that 10X group moves super fast. And I was working for Graham back in the day. I mean, it was just like, let's go. You're going to either fizzle out if you can't hang, or you're going to run and you're going to succeed.
Exactly. And Brandon's whole thing is like, hey, if you're overwhelmed, add more to your plate. And so I loved it because I can handle a lot. I really. And so it was just off to the races, and I was learning an exorbitant amount from Brandon because I'm the president of 10X Health, but yet he has me going to all Cardone Ventures dinners with him. And Cardone Ventures is, as you know, it's helping business owners grow and scale. So I'm working with business owners in all different industries, understanding what they're doing, and then quickly learning Brandon's system for operating and scaling, which, by the way, is the best I've ever seen. I have never in my life seen a better entrepreneurial organizational structure than the way that Brandon thinks about managing employees, structuring a business, preparing it for sale, understanding certain metrics, revenue per employee, the whole thing. I was just like blown away.
Yeah.
I had been through a lot of it, and I had just made a lot of these changes.
Yeah.
And so I'm getting this knowledge about what Cardone Ventures does and how they structure businesses while managing 10X Health. And so we close on Health Gains, the old business, and I'll never forget this day. It was I'm sitting with Brandon and like 4 other executives, and everyone's on the phone doing different things. And I'm just sitting there. I'm like, it's like the happiest day of my life because now I've just left a company. We've executed a deal. I'm about to go back in, and I went from a sales guy a year and a half before to now I'm the president of a company 5 times bigger that's about to buy the company that I started off as a sales guy for, and now I'm the president of all of that, right? And so I get in Brandon's roles, and I just remember sitting with him, and he goes, "This is a surreal day for you." And I was like, "Yeah, man, it's sweet." And he goes, and I said, "Have you ever had this happen with anybody? Where they build a company and then you recruit them and leave, and then you buy the company?" He goes, "Never. This is a first."
Yeah, no way.
Yeah.
Wow.
I would just I walk in with Brandon, mind you. I've developed all these employees and I have a real relationship with all these employees, but for 3 months I was unable to talk to any of them because I couldn't, because of the deal we were about to buy them. I couldn't even talk to any of them. Brandon was like, "Don't talk to anyone there. Don't blow the deal." Right? So I said, "Okay." So I didn't talk to him, and they're all like, "What the heck? Like, you just stopped talking to all of us? Like, we loved you." So I walk back in after 3 months. Brandon and Mark makes the announcement to everyone at 4:00, and we walk in at 5:00, and he says, "Hey guys, the business has been sold. The new owners will be here at 5:00. Nobody knew it was 10X. He didn't make the announcement. He just said the new owners will be here at 5:00.
Ooh, okay.
So me and Brandon walk in at 5:00 on a Monday, and I'm dressed just like this, and so is Brandon. Whatever, just in all black. We have some 10X stuff on, and everyone's standing in this one room, and I walk in, and it's just like, people are just like, "What is Wayne doing here?" Like what's going on? And Brandon says, "Hey, I'm Brandon Dawson, part of the Grant Cardone and Gary Brecka. And, we're 10X Health and we're acquiring you guys. Super, super excited for this partnership. I don't really operate day to day in 10X Health the way Wade does. He's the president. He makes all decisions. So you guys now all report to him." And dude, it was like, I still, for me, it was just so emotional because a bunch of the employees just started crying. It was like, it was crazy because they went from like being scared of the owner and his wife before that, and not like, look, they did a great job. No shots at them, but like the cultural aspect wasn't there. They created the culture that everybody loved. And so now when I came back, it was amazing. Everyone was happy.
Wow, what a surreal moment, man.
Surreal.
It's a full circle moment. And those happen, and they're so special when they do, man. And I think it's part of the preparation meets opportunity kind of concept, right? Yep. And then it's also just, it's crazy when you look at it from, again, where you started, how you got to that position, all the things that you learned, the personality that you've developed, the character that you've developed, the things that you were able to instill into others, for them to almost welcome you back and be thrilled that it was you.
Yeah.
I think that's just such a great emotional arc and a whole loop, man. And so congratulations, man. That was freaking awesome. That's just a great accomplishment overall. Thanks. Which is just very rare. But how is it like working with Brandon Dawson directly one-on-one? He's one of my favorite mentors. I've learned a lot about a lot of his stuff. So how's it been behind the scenes working with him?
Unbelievable. It was, I had worked this whole time with Steve as my mentor to learn all these skills, and he helped me negotiate, my contracts. He helped me understand my leverage and understand how to move and grow up, and, taught me really like the importance of meditation and stoicism. And so I had become this person as a result of working one-on-one with Steve. Now I get to take it to a whole nother level with working with Brandon, because Brandon's understanding of scale and structure and selling companies and going into these markets is incredible. Not to mention, he has one of the most unbelievable work ethics I had ever seen in my life.
Oh yeah,
and as Grant's business partner, really understand marketing and growing a brand and how to retain employees and how to create a next level culture, something I had never ever seen before. Like a cult following. Dude, the turnover rate at Cardone Ventures and 10X Health is ridiculously low. Some of the lowest I've ever seen at any company. And it's not that they pay them exorbitantly more. They always pay market or a little bit more. They're very, very fair with employees, but they have incentive structures to be able to incentivize people to always make 10 to 15% more than their salary. It doesn't matter if you're the janitor or a doctor can't have that structure because of medical, but it doesn't matter if you're the janitor or an executive. You have incentive compensation structure so that you're not just floating along, right, typical salary.
Yeah.
And he brought me everywhere. he would say the jet's going to be here tomorrow morning. Just get on the plane. We're going to the NFL Hall of Fame to meet, a bunch of retired football players, and we're going to give speeches and go to this thing, go do all this. And it was just there, boom. I always kept 2 suitcases with all black clothes 100% of the time, just ready to go.
Your go bag.
Always, my go bag.
That's awesome.
So he says, okay, now you have an office in Scottsdale, Arizona as well. And, here's a place, and you have an office in Miami, and it's go time. Like, I need you to, first off, I need you to understand how I consider business and structure and what Cardone Ventures teaches. So you're going to go into my business mastery leadership program. As an executive, you're going to go into my program where I teach business owners how to do this. You're going to go to all Cardone Ventures events. You're going to go to these 360s, and you're going to learn and absorb. And I was like, oh my God, I've been given a role as the president of 10X Health with full autonomy, and Brandon's given me a world-class education of literally $300,000 worth of education. Not only that, he says very quickly, wow, you understand business and structure in a way that, I had hoped for and that we need, but you have an ability to talk to these other business owners at Cardone Ventures. So every Cardone Ventures dinner after the 360 events where they would have the prominent business owners at the dinner table, I would sit with Brandon every single time. He would have other executives placed at other tables to be able to drive conversations with these business owners. Brandon would always be like, hey, Wade, come sit with me. And so I literally got to learn and see and experience Brandon and how he operated one-on-one.
Wow.
It was, and Brandon doesn't give a lot of people his time. So for him to consistently give me his time the way that he did, it was surreal, and I felt like the golden boy. It was an unbelievable opportunity. The thing is, Brandon asked me to do all these things, and I just always said yes. Like, dude, they were like, you're gonna go back and forth from Arizona to here, to Beverly Hills, to Texas, to all these places. Like, you need to be ready to go. And 100% of the time I said yes.
Wow. Yeah, that's a common trait and a common thing with rapidly growing companies. I worked with Cardone at their agency back in the day. It was literally the same thing. It was like 4 a.m. to like 10 p.m. midnight every single day for me. I was working at I was doing school as well, but just back and forth because it's market and they're capturing market share. Exactly. It's not like a normal 9 to 5 where clock in, clock out, just do these admin tasks or whatever. Typically how jobs are kind of structured, unless it's incentive and sales or something like that. So I think that created such a big lift for me, and that's awesome that it did for you. I mean, dude, Brandon Dawson working in that tight circle. What are some of the things that you learned? Maybe like 3 things that you learned just being in proximity to kind of working with some of those high level people and also those high level executives that you then ended up having dinners with as well.
Well, the biggest thing that Brandon taught me was how to operate at hyperscale. There's months where we went from 2.3 million to over 5 million from 1 month to the next.
That's hyperscale.
So imagine fulfillment in an industry that doesn't have vendors that are prepared to be able to scale with you. Because functional medicine is a new industry. It's not insurance-based medicine where they can produce a bunch of medicine. This is, hey, what happens when we get 5,000 genetic test orders overnight at one event? How are we going to fulfill that? And so what Brandon started doing is he started saying, hey, wait, listen, you are head of M&A. You now need to understand how to value, how to do due diligence, and how to have conversations with our vendors and other business owners to be able to see how quickly we can acquire them so that we can vertically integrate and go through hyperscale while acquiring the people in our network. And so, dude, I just started sizing up all of our vendors all the time, constantly, and looking for new vendors everywhere we went in order to be able to handle the demand. Luckily, my salesmanship and my ability to speak and create relationships is really what M&A is all about. All right. And so I would start to understand these business owners, and I would say, hey, when are you thinking about retiring? And what are you guys doing in top line? And we start to have these conversations. And then along the way, we started acquiring and helped us acquire multiple clinics, a couple vendors, and it helped us be able to fulfill the demand. So hyperscale, understanding how to envision and position the company and acquire others during hyperscale, super important. That's probably like the number one thing I learned from Brandon.
Okay.
2 is the way that they onboard, and okay, you can go from a sales guy to a sales manager, and here's kind of your path, and here's your training materials. Good luck. And at 10X Health, and I know at Cardone Ventures as well, you have a conversation after 60 days with your manager, every single employee, and you review your personal, professional, financial goals, 1, 3, 5 year. And it is the responsibility of the manager to challenge your goals in a way that makes them SMART style goals, specific, measurable, the whole deal. And then the manager's responsibility to weave in how this employee can hit all of their personal, professional, financial 1, 3, 5 year goals through the model and acceleration in the company. And it's an absolutely beautiful way to onboard and bring an employee into the company, because now the employee says, wow, this company actually cares about me. And they do. Not only will they give the employee the resources, materials, and training to be able to accelerate and get into the position that they want to achieve personally, professionally, financially, the goals that they've set out to do, they'll actually show them what metrics and milestones need to happen all the way along the way, and they'll track them based on their goals. So now, instead of just showing up to work doing some random ass bullshit and with no buy-in, always one foot out the door, you have an entire life tracker to say, within this company, I need to do X, Y, and Z, and that's going to accelerate my ability to achieve exactly what I want to achieve in my life. Why would anyone ever leave that? Yeah, so those are the first two things. And then the third thing is, if the solution that you're creating is perfectly ready before you go to market, you've gone to market too late. Need to just get a minimally viable product or service ready and go to market. You will get feedback from the customer. You are going to have backlash. You are going to have problems with fulfillment and operations, but you're going to need to tweak those anyway. Whatever you think is perfect when you go to market isn't perfect anyway. So stop fucking around. Just get everything together, go to market, and deal with whatever headaches come later. Now, if you're consistently dealing with the same problems and you're not solving the problems that are repetitive in the business, that means you're not structuring operations or operating protocols the way that you need. Shame on you. But if the problems arise and you create new protocols and new SOPs and you put project managers on this and you are solving them, then you're going to get to market much more quickly. Drive revenue, figure out operations and fulfillment later. And that was the other thing I learned, because I was like, wow, make it good enough. Understand your buyer and your market, start marketing and get sales, and you'll figure everything else out later. Wow. Those are three keys that really kind of changed my conception about entrepreneurship.
Yeah, those are awesome, man. And I think anyone that's listening to this definitely should go check out Reinvent, check out their group. It's a really big, great group that changed my life, the way that I look at business as well. And those are three great topics, and I mean, three great insights from the inside that you've got. And I think if you implement those for your businesses, or the ones that you're looking to start or thinking through bringing some to market, those are exactly what people need to hear. And so go check them out. But so you said then you're managing and operating really 10x health. So now it's going over to the Gary Brecka story, right? And so how did that kind of get together, and how was it like working for him?
I mean, Gary is a genius. And he also has the most unique background and skill set that I've ever seen, because typically a functional medicine doctor, a hormone doctor, someone in regenerative medicine starts off as a traditional doctor, whether it be an internist or a gastro or a HEPA doctor or whatever it may be. And then they start to get frustrated with the typical medical system, and they see an opportunity to help patients be preventative in the way that they condition their health. So they say, okay, I'm going to flip from a traditional insurance-based doctor, sort of sucked in by the system and consistently prescribing medications that, pharma companies control. Great. They have a traditional foundation and they move into this form of medicine. They have a passion for it and they learn a lot. Gary's background is being an actuary. For 25 years, he was hired by insurance companies to predict accurately the death of the people with whom the insurance companies were insuring. So he's looking at all the data and saying, based on what I'm seeing, this is when this person is going to die. And instead of a typical doctor that works with the patient and actually has no idea, based on their results, when exactly they die, the insurance company knows exactly when all these people actually die. So now Gary has all these real-time results and statistics that he's predicting death from and seeing when people are going to die. He can flip that model and say, instead of me predicting when someone's going to die and looking at the biomarkers that are contributing to their death, what can we do to change those biomarkers and nutrient deficiencies in someone's body to help them prolong their life? And so he has a different lens through which he has been looking through as an actuary at an insurance company versus a traditional doctor.
And it's not just living longer, it's living better, healthier, feeling actually better, because there's a difference too with functional medicine versus just traditional medicine or whatever. prescribing things just to solve a quote unquote problem, but then getting you addicted to a different problem, versus actually using actual natural solutions or supplements to help with those solutions to actually have not only a longer life, but a more fulfilling life, a happier life. It makes you feel better, etc. So I think he's a blessing to Earth and just coming out with that kind of stuff, because I know he had some transitionary moments where he was trying to figure out if he should or not do it. So I'm super grateful. I'm on 10X Health, and so
hell yeah, me too.
It's awesome, man. It's awesome.
Yeah.
So going back to working for Gary, obviously super knowledgeable, helping Dana White, helping now Joe Rogan, helping all these other A-list celebrities that you're talking about earlier. What were some of the insights that you learned from him in the biohacking space, if you will, or just wellness and just really, really stepping up that side of someone's life?
Yeah, I feel so blessed to have been able to work with him, because like you said, he's just next level. And at the time when I came over, I didn't know much about the methylation cycle. And most people don't. Most doctors don't know much about the importance of the 5 methylated genes. And Gary started to help me really understand the methylation cycle, which is 5 genes within our body that are responsible for how we convert anything we put into our body, mainly supplements and food, right? Mm-hmm. So just like you would, Exxon will drill crude oil out of the ground. That crude oil isn't utilized in a car to make it go. It has to be refined from crude oil to gasoline to be put in a car to power it. Same thing happens in our body. When we put food or supplements into our body, it actually has to go through a refinement or methylation process to get to its usable form that our body can use for energy. And many people think that the conditions they have, or the food sensitivities or the anxiety or ADD, should be treated through typical medication or eliminating some things from the diet, when really it's just a body's inability to process these food or the supplements in an optimal way, thus causing mood, mind, and gut related issues. And so what Gary and Dr. Sarda put together was saying, hey, let's look at these 5 methylated genes, and based on those genetic breaks, we will supplement for the nutrient deficiencies that someone has that's not allowing them to process anything they put in optimally. And this solves for so many gut issues, so many anxiety disorders, so many mood, mind, and gut related issues. For me, it completely solved my stomach issues. It solved a lot of underlying anxiety that I didn't even know I had. You talk about living longer, but also, optimizing your health span, living a more fulfilled life. I didn't even know that my baseline was shit until I went through this, right? Like I thought, it's just part of getting older or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And so you take this methylated genetic test, you see your gene breaks, and the result is, hey, here's the supplements that you should be supplementing with that will alleviate most of these gene breaks and conditions. So all of a sudden I go from, I'm taking 20 different supplements because, I hear on Huberman and Sinclair and on Joe Rogan's podcast that I should be taking these supplements. And a lot of these are great supplements, but it doesn't mean that they're right for my body.
Yeah.
And so I eliminate basically half of those. I start taking the supplements that are prescribed through the genetic tests. Now I feel unbelievable.
Yeah.
Like what feels like 150%.
Did you have the motherfucker gene?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I had the motherfucker gene, and I had the COMT one. Yep. Do you have those as well? Yep. Any others?
ACHTY.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. I'm going to act like I know what that all is. That's cool. So like a couple more were broken in that sequence or whatever.
Yeah.
So interesting, man. And that was the first time when he breaks it down through that, basically that refinement chart and like how it actually processes and what areas are affected. I was like, that makes so much sense, dude. So much sense. Yeah. So obviously just continue on. So Gary, you learn all this stuff from him. You see the process of how the body itself decomposes the things that are used for nutrients, and just even how your chemicals work, etc. Then from there, what about the celebrities that he was working with? Those high level celebrities. Obviously, we can't name drop a bunch of the different names, but what did you learn in that process of really optimizing their health? Because they have access to the top medicine. They're probably on the most expensive. It could be steroids or it could be others, experimental drugs and stuff like that. Tell us about how that system that Gary's developed with 10X Health had changed their lives as well and what they were looking for.
So despite working with so many of the top concierge doctors, and I saw this across many of these celebrities where they already have their own doctors, and eventually their doctors become big time believers in what 10X does, even though some of them are skeptics before. But the reason is because none of these top doctors really understand the methylation cycle the way that Gary and Dr. Sarda put this together. One. Two, many of them will look at a blood test through a traditional medical background. And yes, they might have really good, functional credentials and understand hormones and hormone production, liver, adrenal, thyroid functionality, glucose management, and some other things. But they're not looking at the patterns the way that Gary is based on his, background as actuary. So they're missing many slight tweaks that are very easy to fix without having to go to testosterone or growth hormone or many of the peptides through sometimes herbs and basic supplements. And Gary's and our show's ability to read a blood test is unparalleled. So the way that they prescribe from a blood test is, again, it's so much more advanced than most. They're also looking at, things like homocysteine, which is a measure of inflammation in your body. They're really understanding your glucose management and even providing feedback to, hey, your body's not great on keto. You're more of a carb burner.
That's exactly what it was for me.
Right? For me, they're like, dude, your blood sugar is way too low. You're in the opposite effect here. You need to stop fasting. Fasting for you is no good. So just stop doing it. When you wake up in the morning, get some protein first thing in the morning. Same set, right? It's going to reduce your sugar cravings. It's going to help you stay more fit. It's going to help you put on lean muscle. It's going to help you do all these things. So I'm like, wow. And I had worked with many functional doctors before going to 10X that never told me any of this stuff. So I'm already so bought in, and I'm seeing all these celebrities and all these other high level people. And it's not, when we talk about all of these celebrities, these people with money, why are we talking to have access to something that nobody else has, which is the top level doctors?
Yeah, and it's not a money thing. Like, they got the money, they got the status, and even for the doctor, they have the incentive to help them because it's a case study for them.
Right.
So it's to that exact point. If they're all moving in a direction and they're feeling better, testimonials are popping up left, right. It's like, hey, you should pay attention. And what's cool about what they have built and what you had essentially built, being the president there, is an accessible version of this.
Yes.
It doesn't cost hundreds of thousands of dollars or even tens of thousands of dollars really to get tapped into this and to start changing the way that your life cycle is. People can get started with the gene test. It's like what, $600 or something like that?
Gene test $600, blood test $600, and before going to the superhuman protocol and all the expensive equipment, you can do that for free.
Yeah.
And reading a blood test much more comprehensively, understanding the methylation cycle. Those are the two things that 10X and Gary bring to the table. And the third one is understanding what Gary always talks about, which is the presence of oxygen is the absence of disease. People say, oh yeah, well, I breathe normally and I go outside. It's not that. When we're breathing normally, we're basically filling up our lungs halfway. We're not hyperoxygenating our body. But by following the simple superhuman protocol that Gary talks about, you're hyperoxygenating your body and you're eliminating the likelihood that you're going to have degenerative conditions and early onset of disease. And you can do it just by literally going outside, taking your shoes off, grounding on the earth, putting your feet on the ground, doing 3 rounds of 30 Wim Hof breath work, and getting some direct sunlight, in the morning. And if you live in a climate where sunlight's not available, then getting a red light panel, is the easiest way to do it.
Yeah. I remember when I was living in Texas for a little bit, the summers were super hot and then the winters were like bone chilling cold. So you don't want to really go outside and take off your shoes because it's just freezing out there. So that's cool. So getting a red light, doing the grounding, which is the PEMF mat, that they can actually use.
So if you do it with the equipment, you'll lay on the PEMF mat, separates all 32 trillion red blood cells. And so people say, well, why is that important? Because you need maximum oxygen to eliminate the likelihood that you get disease. And the way that you can get maximum oxygen is to have your red blood cells have maximum surface area to be able to accept the oxygen. So you get to the PEMF mat, you spread all your red blood cells. Now you have the ability to accept as much oxygen as humanly possible. You get on the bike and they put the oxygen mask on you. You suck that 6 liters of 95% pure oxygen, way purer than anything we can get out here. Now you've flooded your body with the oxygen while you're doing some aerobic exercise. The body's craving it, needing it, asking it. And then you lay on the red light bed. Every red light bed is created differently. So the panels will drive, maybe 1.5 inches deep, the oxygen into your body. But the red light bed that they use, the Theralite 360, will go 3.5 inches all the way around. And what that means is you've opened your red blood cells, you've flooded it with oxygen, and the red light bed is driving the oxygen into your cells, thus creating maximum energy, maximum ATP, circulation, endurance. It's going it's going into your muscles all the way down into a...
Do these red lights count?
Yeah.
No, that's awesome, man. That's awesome. So from there, I mean, you're very, very keen on obviously optimizing health, optimizing businesses, and you're now helping a lot of entrepreneurs and people that maybe just getting even started to really start tackling their personal stuff first to then be able to accelerate in both of those categories. So let's talk about how are you helping people now with your coaching? How are you doing that with the events that you guys are throwing on, doing the masterminds, stuff like that? Let's talk more about what you're doing there on that front.
Having the personal journey that I did and overcoming so many issues from sales guy to the president, working with Brandon and Gary, understanding health and longevity. Am I the most disorganized, degenerate, addicted to drugs to the most executive and entrepreneur possible? Like, I never miss a 5 a.m. wake up time. I never miss a hike. I never miss prayer. I never miss meditation. I never miss a walk. I never miss workout. I never miss. And what's helped me accelerate my life and my journey from when I became so disciplined on my personal development and my health towards how much money I made. It's insane what happened when I started it.
You know what I find very interesting? It's the same addictive personality, but just channeled into different means and productive compounding things. Because I had the same thing as well, where I was so addicted to books and so addicted to just business and finance. Luckily, I started that journey very, very early on, but it's that same trigger, it's that same switch, and just when channeled properly, I mean, there's nothing more fulfilling than helping people reach their potential and reach their goals. So that's awesome, man. Where can people find you and actually get in touch with you to, maybe start that journey with you or follow more of your content and stuff that you're putting out online?
If Instagram is the main platform that I use right now, I'll launch YouTube early next year. But yeah, it's at Wade Houston on Instagram.
Okay, great, awesome. We'll go ahead and link that stuff into the description there. That way you guys can follow his journey when he launches his YouTube. We'll put that in the description as well. But Wade, what would you give maybe one last thing to the audience, whether it's a takeaway or something like that you want to leave them with, especially around business, around mindset, around really personal change?
The biggest thing is that mindset is changed through action, not through thinking, not through books, and not through YouTube. It doesn't matter how much information you absorb. You cannot change the way solely by information. You must take the action that you set out to take, thus building confidence, fortifying your mind, and changing your reaction to life.
Awesome, man. With that said, guys, thank you so much for watching this episode. We will get this posted, and I'm super excited because that was Wade Houston, the one and only entrepreneur. Talk soon, guys. See you in the next episode. Peace.